My husband insisted on equal custody rights but couldn't handle basic parenting responsibilities, so when daycare called about him being late again, I called his bluff and let the authorities deal with it. Hello Reddit, I need advice on whether I made the right choice. My husband Colson, 34M, and I, Alyssa, 32F, have been married for 6 years and have a 3-year-old son named Travis. We're both nurses, but Colson works in a specialized cardiac unit and makes about $120,000 while I work part-time in pediatrics and make around $65,000. Our marriage has been struggling for the past 2 years. The main issue is that Colson insists we split all household expenses 50-50, which seems fair on paper, but he contributes maybe 20% to actual housework and childcare. I handle most of Travis's daily needs, doctor appointments, meal prep, bedtime routines, and cleaning while also working 3 12-hour shifts per week. Colson works Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but he also picks up overtime shifts on weekends. When he gets home, he usually goes straight to his computer to play video games or watch sports. On weekends when he's not working, he sleeps until 11 a.m. and then spends the day on personal projects in the garage. 6 months ago, I suggested we try counseling. Colson agreed to go twice but then said it was a waste of money and time. He claimed the counselor was biased against men and that our problems would solve themselves once Travis got older and more independent. The breaking point came 3 months ago. I had worked a particularly difficult shift in the NICU and came home to find Colson playing video games while Travis sat in a dirty diaper watching TV. There were dishes piled in the sink from breakfast, Travis's lunch was still on the floor where he'd thrown it, and the laundry I'd asked Colson to fold was still sitting in the basket from 2 days earlier. When I asked Colson what he'd been doing all day, he said he'd had a stressful week and needed to decompress. Travis had apparently been asking for me all day, but Colson told him I was busy and he needed to be quiet. That night, I told Colson I wanted a trial separation. I wasn't ready for divorce, but I needed to see if he could actually handle being a parent when forced to do it alone. Colson immediately said he wanted 50-50 custody of Travis. I agreed, but with conditions. We would do week on, week off custody. To keep things stable for Travis, whoever had custody would stay in our house, and the other parent would stay in a small apartment Colson's brother was renting out nearby. The apartment had to be left clean for the next person, or the messy person would pay for professional cleaning. Colson seemed confident this would be easy. He said I was being dramatic and that he'd prove he could handle Travis just fine on his own. The first week Colson had Travis, I moved into the apartment. It was filthy. There were dirty dishes in the sink, trash overflowing, and the bathroom looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. I had to hire a cleaning service and sent Colson the $150 bill. When I got Travis back after Colson's first week, my son seemed tired and cranky. His clothes were dirty, his hair hadn't been brushed, and he kept asking when we were going to eat real food. Colson had apparently fed him cereal, frozen nuggets, and peanut butter sandwiches for most meals. The apartment was a disaster again when I returned to it after my custody week. Colson had left dirty clothes everywhere, the kitchen was gross, and there was some kind of sticky substance on the bathroom floor. Another $150 cleaning bill. This pattern continued for 2 months. Every single week, I had to hire cleaners for the apartment. Colson never seemed to improve or learn from the previous weeks. But the real problem started with Travis's daycare. We use Little Sprouts Learning Center, which closes at 6 p.m. sharp. Colson's shift ends at 7 p.m., so he arranged to pick Travis up at 5:45 p.m. on his custody days. During Colson's third custody week, I got a call from the daycare at 6:15 p.m. Colson hadn't shown up, and they couldn't reach him. I had to leave my own shift early to get Travis, which put me in trouble with my supervisor. When I confronted Colson later, he said he'd gotten caught up in a complicated patient case and lost track of time. He promised it wouldn't happen again. But it did happen again. And again. Over the next 2 months, I received calls from the daycare at least once during every one of Colson's custody weeks. Sometimes Colson was just 15 minutes late, but twice he was over an hour late. The daycare charges $5 per minute for late pickup, which added up quickly. More importantly, the staff was getting frustrated. They have their own families and can't stay indefinitely waiting for parents. After the 6th incident, the daycare director called me into a meeting. She explained that they were considering removing Travis from the program if the pattern continued. She said they understood we were going through a separation, but Travis's pickup schedule needed to be reliable. I had a serious talk with Colson after that meeting. I explained that he needed to arrange backup care for days when his work might run late. He could hire a babysitter to pick Travis up and stay with him until Colson got home. Colson said that was an unnecessary expense and that I was being unreasonable. I told Colson that I couldn't keep leaving my own job to cover for him. My supervisor had already written me up twice for abandoning my shift, and I was at risk of losing my position. Colson's response was that this was temporary and that once we figured out our marriage, things would go back to normal. He still didn't seem to understand that his actions during the separation were actually pushing me further toward divorce. The 7th late pickup happened last month. I got the call at 6:20 p.m. and told the daycare I would be there as soon as possible. But this time, I didn't rush. I finished my current patient notes, gave report to the night nurse, and drove to the daycare at normal speed. I arrived at 6:45 p.m. to find Travis sitting with two very annoyed teachers and Coulson jogging in from the parking lot. He'd apparently been at the hospital bar with colleagues after his shift and forgot about pickup time. The daycare director pulled us both aside and said this was Travis's final warning. One more incident and they would be forced to report the situation to Child Services and remove Travis from the program. That night, I told Coulson he had one more chance to prove he could handle his custody responsibilities. I suggested he take vacation days during his next custody week to focus entirely on Travis and establish better routines. Coulson refused. He said I was being controlling and that he shouldn't have to use his vacation time to prove anything to me. He claimed I was sabotaging our separation by making unreasonable demands. 2 weeks ago, Coulson started his custody week. I moved into the apartment, which was predictably gross, and hired cleaners again. On Wednesday of that week, at 6:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was the daycare. Coulson was nowhere to be found, and Travis had been waiting for over 30 minutes. I told the daycare director to go ahead and call the authorities. Coulson arrived at 7:15 p.m. to find police officers and a social worker interviewing Travis and the daycare staff. Apparently, he'd scheduled a minor surgical procedure for 4 p.m. that day and had an arranged alternative pickup. Coulson called me that night screaming about how I'd abandoned our son and put him in danger. He said I was a terrible mother for letting strangers interrogate Travis instead of just picking him up myself. I reminded Coulson that I'd warned him multiple times about this exact scenario. I also pointed out that these issues only happened during his custody weeks, never during mine. The next day, the daycare officially expelled Travis from their program. Now Coulson is demanding we go back to our original living arrangement so he can help with Travis's new childcare situation. He says the trial separation proved that we work better as a team and that splitting up is bad for Travis. But I think the trial separation proved exactly what I suspected, that Coulson wants the benefits of being Travis's father without actually doing the work. I believe he pushed for 50-50 custody not because he wanted the responsibility, but because it would reduce his child support payments if we divorced. I've started looking into new daycares and considering moving back to my hometown where my parents could help with Travis. Coulson says if I move away, he'll fight for full custody and claim I'm trying to keep Travis from him. I'm scheduled to have Travis for the next week, but Coulson is refusing to move back to the apartment. He's sleeping in our guest room and acting like the separation is over. Was I wrong to let the authorities get called instead of just enabling Coulson's irresponsibility one more time? Update 1: The fallout from my last post has been intense. Thank you to everyone who commented. It helped me realize I wasn't crazy for refusing to keep covering for Coulson. The day after I posted, Coulson's parents showed up at our house unannounced. His mother Linda, 58F, immediately started yelling at me about putting Travis in danger and ruining Coulson's reputation at work. Apparently, the incident at the daycare had gotten back to some of Coulson's colleagues, and he was facing questions from his supervisor about his reliability. Linda demanded to know why I couldn't just pick Travis up myself instead of involving police. She said that as Travis's mother, it was my job to protect him, not use him as a weapon against Coulson. Coulson's father Tom, 61M, was quieter but kept shaking his head and muttering about how women today don't know how to compromise. He said that in his day, wives supported their husbands instead of trying to destroy them. I explained the situation from my perspective, the multiple warnings, the repeated failures, the impact on my own job. Linda interrupted me to say that Coulson worked harder than I did and deserved understanding when he made mistakes. When I mentioned that Coulson had been at a bar when he missed pickup, Linda's face changed. She turned to Coulson and asked if that was true. Coulson tried to downplay it, saying he'd only had one drink with colleagues and lost track of time. Tom asked Coulson why he hadn't arranged for backup childcare if he knew his schedule was unpredictable. Coulson got defensive and said he shouldn't have to pay for extra babysitting when I was perfectly capable of pickup. The conversation ended with Linda saying she was disappointed in both of us for not putting Travis first. But I noticed she didn't offer to help with childcare or suggest any solutions. After his parents left, Coulson and I had our worst fight yet. He accused me of deliberately humiliating him in front of his family and colleagues. He said I could have handled the daycare situation privately instead of involving authorities. I asked Coulson what exactly he thought would happen after 8 warnings and failures. He said he expected me to be understanding and supportive, like a real partner would be. That's when Coulson revealed something that shocked me. He admitted he'd never actually wanted 50-50 custody. He said he only demanded it because his divorce attorney friend had told him it would minimize child support payments and make me think twice about divorcing him. Coulson said he'd assumed I would get tired of the arrangement and begged to go back to our normal routine where I handled most of Travis's care. He never intended to actually manage solo parenting long term. I asked Coulson if he even wanted to be Travis's father or if he just wanted to avoid paying for Travis's care. Coulson got angry and said of course he loved Travis, but that didn't mean he had to completely rearrange his career and social life. The next week, I found a new daycare called Rainbow Academy. They had an opening, but their enrollment fee was $500 and monthly tuition was $200 more than Little Sprouts. When I told Coulson about the cost increase, he said it was my fault for getting Travis kicked out of the cheaper place. Coulson refused to pay the enrollment fee or the extra monthly cost. He said since I'd created the problem, I could figure out how to pay for the solution. I ended up borrowing money from my parents for the enrollment fee. They were supportive but asked a lot of questions about why Coulson wasn't contributing to Travis's expenses anymore. During Coulson's next custody week, I waited to see if he would have pick up problems at the new daycare. Rainbow Academy closes at 6:30 p.m. and charges $10 per minute for late pickup, with a policy that police will be called after 30 minutes. On Tuesday, I got a call at 6:45 p.m. Coulson was late again. But this time, when I told them to follow their policy, the daycare director hesitated. She said they preferred to give new families a grace period to adjust to schedules. I explained our history and that Coulson needed to experience consequences for his actions. The director agreed to call the authorities if Coulson wasn't there by 7 p.m. Coulson arrived at exactly 7 p.m., breathless and angry. The police were already in the parking lot. Coulson saw them and immediately called me, screaming that I was trying to get him arrested and take Travis away permanently. But something unexpected happened. Travis started crying when he saw the police cars and asking why the officers were there. The social worker who responded was the same one from the previous incident. The social worker pulled me aside later and said she was required to open a file on our family due to the repeated incidents. She explained that while missing pickup wasn't criminal, the pattern suggested potential neglect issues that needed monitoring. Coulson was furious when he learned about the social services file. He blamed me entirely and said I'd ruined his chances of getting fair custody if we divorced. That weekend, Coulson announced he was ending the trial separation. He said it had been a failed experiment and that we needed to focus on being a family again. But I realized the separation had shown me exactly what I needed to see. Coulson wasn't capable of or interested in being a reliable parent. More importantly, he was angry at me for expecting him to be one. I told Coulson I wanted to make the separation permanent and start divorce proceedings. He said if I filed for divorce, he would fight for full custody and claim I was an unfit mother who used Travis as a pawn. Coulson moved back into the guest room permanently and started documenting everything I did with Travis. He followed me around with his phone, recording conversations and taking pictures of Travis's meals, outfits, and activities. When I put Travis to bed 15 minutes later than usual, Coulson noted it in a notebook. When Travis spilled juice on his shirt and I didn't change it immediately, Coulson took photos. Coulson also started scheduling work calls during his designated Travis time, then claiming I was interfering with his parenting when I tried to keep Travis quiet. The atmosphere in our house became toxic. Travis started having tantrums and asking why Daddy was always angry. He also began wetting the bed again, which he hadn't done in over a year. I consulted with a family attorney last week. She reviewed my documentation of the daycare incidents and Coulson's admission about not really wanting custody. She said I had a strong case for primary custody, especially with the social services file supporting a pattern of unreliability. But she also warned me that Coulson could make the divorce process long and expensive if he wanted to fight. She estimated legal fees could reach $15,000 to $20,000 if Coulson contested everything. The attorney suggested mediation first, but said I should prepare for Coulson to reject any arrangement that didn't minimize his financial responsibilities. I'm now sleeping in Travis's room because Coulson makes me uncomfortable when we're alone in the house. He hasn't been physically aggressive, but he follows me around making accusations and threats about custody. Travis asks me every day why Mommy and Daddy don't laugh anymore and when we're going to play games as a family again. I don't know what to tell him. Update: 2 things have escalated in ways I never expected. Coulson's behavior has become increasingly erratic, and I'm starting to understand how much I didn't know about his true character. 2 weeks after my last update, Coulson announced he'd hired his own attorney. Not just any attorney, he hired Mitchell Stevens, who apparently specializes in father's rights cases and has a reputation for being aggressive. Stevens immediately sent my attorney a letter demanding I stop interfering with Coulson's parenting time and threatening to seek emergency custody if I continued what he called parental alienation. The letter claimed I was deliberately sabotaging Coulson's relationship with Travis by creating unreasonable pickup expectations and involving authorities unnecessarily. It also accused me of coaching Travis to prefer me over Coulson. My attorney was confused by these allegations since Coulson's own admissions and the documented pickup failures contradicted his claims. She suggested we request mediation to avoid an expensive court battle. Coulson agreed to mediation, but his first session revealed how distorted his perception of events had become. He told the mediator that I had conspired with the daycare to make him look bad and that the police calls were part of my plan to frame him as an unfit parent. When the mediator asked about the 8 pickup failures, Coulson claimed they were mostly due to medical emergencies at work that I should have understood. He said a good wife would have covered for him instead of making him look bad. Coulson also revealed that he'd been keeping a detailed journal of my parenting for weeks. He brought a folder full of photos and notes documenting times Travis's socks didn't match, when I let Travis have screen time, and instances when I raised my voice. The mediator seemed skeptical of Coulson's evidence, especially when she compared it to my documentation of the daycare issues and social services involvement. But Coulson's most shocking revelation came when he accused me of having an affair. He claimed that my desire for separation was actually because I wanted to be with another man, and that I was using Travis to hurt him. I was stunned. I asked Coulson who he thought I was having an affair with, and he said he knew I'd been texting someone named Alex frequently. Alex is my nurse manager at work, a 45-year-old married woman with 3 kids. I show Coulson the messages, which were entirely about schedules, patient care, and work policies. Coulson seemed genuinely surprised that Alex was a woman. He'd apparently been monitoring my phone usage somehow and seeing frequent contact with that name. After that session, the mediator recommended we try individual counseling before continuing joint mediation. She said Coulson seemed to be operating under some misunderstandings about the situation that were making compromise difficult. Coulson refused counseling and fired his attorney after the man apparently told him his affair accusations were groundless and damaging to his case. Coulson then decided to represent himself, which my attorney said was actually good news for me since most people who represent themselves in custody cases don't do well. But Coulson's self-representation led to increasingly bizarre behavior. He started filming everything in our house, claiming he needed evidence of the hostile environment I was creating. Travis began asking why Daddy was always holding his phone and following us around. When I tried to have normal conversations with Travis, Coulson would interrupt to ask leading questions about whether Mommy was being mean or if Travis wanted to live with Daddy all the time. Coulson also began monitoring Travis's meals obsessively. If I gave Travis chicken nuggets for lunch, Coulson would take photos and write notes about processed food. If Travis didn't finish his vegetables, Coulson documented it as evidence of poor nutrition. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I had taken Travis to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, which we'd been doing monthly for years. When we returned, Coulson was waiting in the driveway with his phone recording. He demanded to know where we'd been and why I hadn't asked his permission to take Travis out of town. My parents lived 20 minutes away, and I'd texted Coulson our plans that morning. Coulson said he was calling the police to report parental kidnapping. I showed him my text from that morning, but he claimed I'd sent it after the fact to cover my tracks. When the police arrived, they quickly determined there was no kidnapping and seemed annoyed at Coulson for wasting their time. But Coulson persisted, showing them his notebook and demanding they arrest me for violating his parental rights. The officers told Coulson that Sunday visits to grandparents during my custody time weren't violations of anything, and suggested he might want to speak with an attorney about appropriate use of police resources. After the officers left, Coulson had what I can only describe as a meltdown. He started yelling that everyone was against him and that I'd somehow convinced the police to take my side. Travis started crying and ran to his room. I followed to comfort him while Coulson continued ranting in the living room about corrupt systems and biased law enforcement. That night, Travis wet the bed again and told me he was scared of Daddy's angry voice. He asked if we could go live with Grandma and Grandpa instead. The next morning, I called my attorney and told her I wanted to file for emergency temporary custody. She said Coulson's behavior was escalating in concerning ways and that documenting everything was important for Travis's safety. My attorney filed the paperwork that afternoon, requesting temporary primary custody and supervised visitation for Coulson until he completed anger management counseling. Coulson was served with papers at work, which embarrassed him in front of his colleagues. His supervisor called me that evening to ask if Coulson was having personal problems that might affect his patient care. I told Coulson's supervisor that we were going through a difficult divorce but that I wasn't aware of any issues with Coulson's professional performance. I didn't want to damage Coulson's career despite everything, partly because Travis needs Coulson to keep his job for child support purposes. But Coulson interpreted my conversation with his supervisor as another attempt to sabotage him. He accused me of trying to get him fired so he couldn't pay child support. Last week, Coulson moved out of our house and into a hotel. He said he couldn't live in a place where his own family had turned against him. Coulson's been calling Travis every night, but the conversations are strange. He asks Travis questions like whether Mommy says bad things about Daddy and whether Travis remembers all the fun times they had together before Mommy got mean. Travis usually hands me the phone after a few minutes and says he's done talking. When I ask Travis about the calls later, he says Daddy asks weird questions and doesn't want to hear about Travis's day. Our temporary custody hearing is scheduled for next month. My attorney says Coulson's behavior has actually helped our case, but she's concerned about how he might react if the judge grants my requests. Coulson's hotel is only 2 miles from our house, and he drives by multiple times per day. He doesn't stop or get out, but Travis has started recognizing Coulson's car and asking why Daddy drives past but doesn't visit. I'm documenting everything, but I'm also exhausted. Travis asks me every day when things will go back to normal, and I don't have an answer for him. Update 3: The temporary custody hearing was 3 weeks ago, and the outcome was better than I hoped for but has led to consequences I didn't anticipate. Coulson showed up to court with a stack of papers he'd printed from the internet about parental alienation and father's rights. He'd also created a PowerPoint presentation that he wanted to show the judge, complete with photos of Travis's mismatched socks and screenshots of my text messages with my supervisor. My attorney had prepared a clean timeline of events with documentation from both daycares, the social services file, and Coulson's own recorded admissions about not wanting actual custody. The judge listened to Coulson's presentation for about 10 minutes before stopping him. She said the evidence showed a clear pattern of Qley being unable to meet basic childcare responsibilities and that his recent behavior suggested he was more focused on conflict with me than on Travis's well-being. The judge granted temporary primary custody to me, with Qley getting supervised visitation every other Saturday for 4 hours. She also ordered Qley to complete co-parenting classes and anger management counseling before visitation could be expanded. Qley stood up in court and told the judge she was making a mistake that would damage Travis permanently. He said the system was rigged against fathers and that I had manipulated everyone involved. The judge warned Qley about his tone and explained that his behavior during the proceedings was actually supporting her decision to limit his access until he could demonstrate better judgment. Walking out of the courthouse, Qley told me this wasn't over and that he would appeal the decision. He said he had evidence I didn't know about that would prove I was an unfit mother. That afternoon, Qley's mother Linda called me. She'd heard about the custody decision from Qley and wanted to discuss visitation with Travis. Linda's call surprised me because she'd been supportive of Qley throughout our separation. But during our conversation, she revealed that Qley had been telling his family increasingly wild stories about my behavior. According to Linda, Qley had claimed I was keeping Travis from him out of spite, that I'd lied to the courts about his work schedule, and that I was planning to move across the country to prevent him from seeing Travis. Linda said she'd believed Qley's version of events until she talked to her neighbor, whose daughter worked at Little Sprouts daycare. The neighbor had mentioned the repeated pickup problems and police involvement, which contradicted everything Qley had told his family. Linda asked if she could take Travis for a few hours each week so he could maintain a relationship with Qley's side of the family. I agreed, and Linda has been picking Travis up every Wednesday for dinner and homework time. During one of these visits, Travis told Linda that Daddy had been asking him to keep secrets about their phone calls. When Linda asked what kind of secrets, Travis said Daddy told him not to tell Mommy about the presents Daddy promised to buy him if Travis said he wanted to live with Daddy. Linda was disturbed by this and told me immediately. She said she loved Qley but that using Travis to gather evidence for court was wrong. 2 weeks after the custody hearing, Qley stopped attending his scheduled visitation sessions. The court-appointed supervisor called to say Qley had canceled 3 Saturday visits in a row, claiming work emergencies each time. When I contacted Qley about the missed visits, he said supervised visitation was humiliating and he wouldn't participate until the court restored his full rights. Qley's absence has actually been easier for Travis and me. Travis stopped asking about the weird phone calls and began sleeping through the night again. His bedwetting episode stopped completely. But Qley's behavior outside of official visits has become more concerning. He still drives past our house multiple times daily, and last week I found him sitting in his car outside Travis's new school during pickup time. I called Qley to ask why he was at Travis's school, and he said he had a right to see his son even if the corrupt court system was trying to prevent it. He claimed he was just making sure Travis was safe and well cared for. The school principal called me the next day to report that a man matching Qley's description had approached Travis on the playground during recess. Travis had pointed the man out to his teacher, saying it was his daddy but that Daddy wasn't supposed to be there. School security had escorted Qley off the property and informed him that he needed to follow official custody arrangements for any contact with Travis during school hours. My attorney filed a motion for a restraining order after the school incident. The judge granted a temporary order prohibiting Qley from coming within 500 feet of Travis's school or our home except during official supervised visits. Qley has violated the restraining order twice that I know of. Once, Travis saw Qley's car parked across the street when we came home from grocery shopping. Another time, our neighbor called to say Qley had been walking around our backyard at night, apparently looking in windows. Each violation was reported to the court, and Qley received warnings that further incidents could result in jail time and complete loss of visitation rights. Last week, Qley's brother called me. He said Qley had been staying with him since the restraining order and that Qley's behavior was scaring his own family. According to his brother, Qley spends hours every day researching legal loopholes and conspiracy theories about family court bias. Qley has also been contacting Travis's school pretending to be calling about enrollment for his own child, apparently trying to get information about Travis's daily schedule. Qley's brother said the family was worried Qley might do something dangerous and asked if I thought Qley needed psychiatric help. I told him I wasn't qualified to make that assessment, but that Qley's actions were certainly concerning. 3 days ago, Qley's mother Linda called with news that shocked me. She said Qley had been arrested for trespassing at his own workplace. Apparently, Qley had been placed on administrative leave pending a psychiatric evaluation after colleagues reported bizarre behavior and paranoid statements about his family situation. When Qley showed up at the hospital despite being told to stay away, security called police. Qley is currently in jail awaiting a hearing on the trespassing charges. His employment status is uncertain, which means his ability to pay child support may be affected. Travis hasn't asked about Qley in over a week. When people mention his father, Travis just shrugs and changes the subject. I've started looking into moving back to my hometown where my parents live. The school district there is excellent, and having family support would help Travis adjust to this new reality. Qley's court-ordered counseling was supposed to start next month, but given his arrest and employment issues, I don't know if he'll be able to comply with the court's requirements. My attorney says Coulson's recent actions have effectively ended any chance of him getting expanded custody. She thinks the permanent custody hearing will likely result in continued supervised visitation at best, and possibly termination of his parental rights if his behavior doesn't improve dramatically. Travis starts kindergarten next month. He's excited about his new teacher and making friends. When he talks about the future, he mentions Grandma and Grandpa, his upcoming birthday party, and learning to ride a bike without training wheels. He doesn't mention his father at all. I never wanted things to end this way, but I'm relieved that Travis is safe and beginning to heal from the chaos Coulson created. Sometimes protecting your child means accepting that the other parent isn't capable of being the parent you hoped they would be. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My wife cheated with my stepfather while my mom was dying, married him after mom died and got pregnant, but now he left her for being too fat. I, 28M, never thought I'd be writing something like this. 2 months ago, my mom passed away after battling cancer for years. She was only 48. Now my life has completely fallen apart, and I don't even know where to begin. My mom had me young, she was only 17 when I was born. My biological father left before I was even born, and mom raised me by herself. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school and make sure I never felt the absence of a father. We were extremely close, just the 2 of us against the world. Mom never really dated while I was growing up. She always said I was her priority, and she didn't want to bring random men into my life. That changed when I was 18 and in my first year of college. She met Andrew at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. He was a doctor, 10 years younger than her, and only 10 years older than me. I was against their relationship at first. The age gap bothered me, not between them, but between Andrew and me. It felt weird having a stepfather who was closer to my age than my mom's. But mom was so happy. I'd never seen her smile so much. Andrew treated her well, helped her advance her career, and genuinely seemed to love her. Over time, I grew to respect him. I met my wife Samantha in my second year of college. She was studying business, and we met in a general education class we both had to take. It wasn't love at first sight or anything dramatic, we just clicked. We started as study partners, became friends, and eventually started dating. Sam was everything I could have asked for, smart, caring, and dedicated. She got along great with my mom, which meant everything to me. Mom absolutely adored Sam. She would always tell me I'd found a keeper, someone who understood the importance of family. When Sam and I got married 3 years ago, Mom cried through the entire ceremony. She kept saying how happy she was that her 2 favorite people in the world had found each other. We all lived close to each other. Sam and I bought a house about 20 minutes from Mom and Andrew's place. Everything was perfect until Mom got sick. The cancer diagnosis came out of nowhere. One day she was fine, the next she was in the hospital. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for almost 2 years. During Mom's illness, our whole family dynamic changed. I took as much time off work as I could, but my job as a software engineer meant I couldn't always be there. Sam stepped up in ways I never expected. She would spend hours at Mom's house, cooking, cleaning, keeping Mom company. She'd even stay overnight sometimes when Mom had particularly bad days and I had early meetings I couldn't miss. Andrew was there too, of course. He took leave from his job to care for Mom full time. Sam and he worked as a team, coordinating Mom's care, managing her medications, taking her to appointments. I was grateful for both of them. Mom's last days were as comfortable as they could be because of their care. When Mom passed away, it hit us all hard. I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the office because being at home reminded me too much of her. Sam continued visiting Andrew's house, our house, as Mom always called it. She said she wanted to help him adjust to living alone, that he shouldn't have to deal with his grief by himself. I thought she was being kind. I was proud of her for caring so much about my family. Looking back, there were signs I missed. The way Sam would talk about Andrew, always mentioning how strong he was being, how well he was handling everything. How she started dressing up more when going to visit him. How she'd come home later and later. I was too wrapped up in my own grief to notice. Last week changed everything. I came home early from work because a client canceled a meeting. Sam's car wasn't in our driveway, which wasn't unusual these days. I figured she must be at Andrew's, so I drove there to surprise them. Maybe we could all have dinner together, talk about Mom, share memories. I still had a key to the house. Mom had insisted I keep one even after I moved out. I heard noises from upstairs as soon as I walked in. My first thought was that Sam and Andrew were moving furniture or something. Mom's hospital bed was still up there, and we talked about donating it. I walked upstairs. The noises got clearer. I still didn't want to believe what I was hearing. I pushed open the bedroom door, Mom and Andrew's bedroom door, and there they were. In my dead mother's bed. Sam was on top of Andrew, both of them naked, so engrossed in each other they didn't even notice me at first. Sam screamed when she saw me. She grabbed the sheets to cover herself while Andrew just sat there, looking more annoyed than ashamed. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at them, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Sam jumped up, wrapping the sheet around herself, crying and saying it wasn't what it looked like. But it was exactly what it looked like. Andrew finally moved, calmly putting on his pants like this was just a minor inconvenience. I turned around and walked downstairs. Sam followed, still crying, still trying to explain. I don't remember exactly what was said next. I know I asked how long it had been going on. Sam broke down completely, sobbing as she admitted it started a month after Mom died. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She was pregnant. 2 months pregnant. Which meant they'd been sleeping together while my mom was still alive, while she was dying in the very bed I'd just found them in. I lost it. I started grabbing things, pictures, vases, anything I could reach, and throwing them. One of the frames hit a window, shattering both. Andrew came downstairs then, still shirtless, and tried to grab me. I swung at him. Connected. He hit back. We ended up in a full fight, rolling around on the floor like teenagers while Sam screamed that she was calling the police if we didn't stop. Andrew finally pushed me off him and stood up, blood running from his nose. He told me to get out of his house. I laughed, actually laughed, and reminded him it was my mother's house too. That's when he told me Mom had left it to him in her will. He said he could have me arrested for trespassing. I looked at Sam, expecting her to say something, to defend me, to show any sign of the woman I'd married. She just stood there crying. I left. I've been staying at my friend Mike's place since then. Sam didn't come home that night. Or the next. She texted saying she needed time to think. I replied telling her to take all the time she needed because I was changing the locks. She showed up with Andrew the next day to collect her things. I made sure I wasn't home. I couldn't bear to see them together. Sam keeps texting that she's sorry, that she never meant for any of this to happen, that she still loves me. Andrew sent an email saying he hopes we can all be civil about this situation for the baby's sake. The baby. My wife is having my stepfather's baby. My dead mother's husband's baby. Every time I think about it, I feel sick. I filed for divorce immediately. My lawyer says it should be straightforward since we don't have kids and most of our assets are separate. Sam keeps saying we should try to work things out, that we can get past this. But we can't. Some betrayals you don't come back from. Edit, thanks for all the support. I'm trying to respond to comments but there are too many. Yes, I've hired a lawyer. No, I don't want to try counseling with Sam. Some things can't be fixed. Update 1: things have gotten even messier, and I need to get this off my chest. After my last post, I was on the fence about telling Sam's parents what happened. They've always treated me like a son, and the thought of hurting them with this news was eating me up inside. But they deserve to know why their daughter's marriage was ending. I've known Sam's parents for 6 years. Her dad John is a high school teacher, and her mom Linda runs a small bakery. They're the kind of people who have family dinner every Sunday and remember everyone's birthdays. They loved my mom too. Linda would always send her homemade cookies during her chemo treatments. Last weekend, I drove to their house. I hadn't told them I was coming because I knew Sam might try to get to them first if she found out. When I pulled up, I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes trying to figure out how to tell them their daughter had betrayed not just me, but my dead mother's memory too. Linda saw me from the window and came out to greet me. She hugged me tight and said she'd been worried about me since Mom's death. She had no idea her daughter was the reason I was falling apart. John was in his study grading papers. They both sat down when I said I needed to talk to them about Sam. I told them everything. About finding Sam and Andrew together. About the affair starting while my mom was still alive. About the pregnancy. About them planning to live in my mother's house. Linda started crying halfway through. John just sat there, his face getting redder and redder. When I finished talking, the silence was deafening. Then John got up and started pacing. He pulled out his phone and called Sam, telling her to come over immediately. His voice was scary calm. Linda was still crying, holding my hand and apologizing over and over as if it was somehow her fault. Sam arrived about an hour later. She walked in looking confused, then stopped dead when she saw me. John started yelling before she could say anything. He called her disgraceful, asked how she could do this to me, to my mom's memory. He brought up how my mom had treated her like a daughter, how she'd trusted Sam to take care of her while she was dying. That's when Sam showed her true colors. She stood up straight and said she was an adult who could make her own choices. She said Andrew understood her in ways I never did, that they connected on a deeper level while caring for my mom. She said that while she was sorry for hurting me, she wasn't sorry for following her heart. Linda started crying harder when Sam said this. She asked about the baby, if Sam had thought about what kind of life that child would have, being the product of such a betrayal. Sam got defensive and dropped another bomb. She and Andrew were planning to get married as soon as my divorce was finalized. She said they wanted to be a proper family. John lost it completely. He told her she was no longer their daughter if she went through with this. He said he'd rather have no daughter than one who could betray a dying woman's trust. Sam started crying then, saying they were being unfair, that she and Andrew were in love and the baby deserved to have married parents. I couldn't take it anymore and left. The whole scene was too much. As I was walking to my car, Sam followed me out. She tried to grab my arm but I pulled away. Then she asked something that showed just how delusional she'd become. She wanted to know if I would consider having joint custody of her baby since it would technically be my step-sibling. I stared at her in disbelief before telling her to never contact me again. The next day, Linda called me crying. She apologized again for what Sam had done and said she and John would support me through the divorce. Then she told me something that made everything worse. Apparently, Sam had been making comments about Andrew since my mom's funeral. She would talk about how young and handsome he was for a widower, how dedicated he was to mom's care, how gentle he was with patients. Linda said she thought it was just grief making Sam say inappropriate things. She said she should have noticed something was wrong when Sam started spending so much time at Andrew's house after mom died. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs. I told her it wasn't her fault, I hadn't seen the signs either. Andrew called me yesterday. He wanted to buy out my share of mom's house to avoid legal complications. I told him to talk to my lawyer. He tried to apologize, saying he never meant for any of this to happen, that feelings just developed between him and Sam while they were caring for mom. I hung up on him. I'm still staying at Mike's, but I'm looking for my own place now. Sam's belongings are all moved out of our house, and I'm planning to sell it. Too many memories there. The divorce proceedings are moving forward despite Sam trying to contest it. She wants us to try counseling first, says we can work through this if we both try. My lawyer shut that down quickly. Mike says I should be grateful I found out now, before we had kids of our own. He's right, but it doesn't make it hurt any less. Every time I close my eyes, I see them together in my mom's bed. I don't know how I'll ever trust anyone again. Update 2. I thought I was done with this whole mess. I moved to a different city, got a new job, and started rebuilding my life. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. Then yesterday happened, and all the wounds I thought had healed got ripped open again. I was at work when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first, I deleted Sam's contact long ago. But I knew her voice the moment she spoke. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She begged me to meet her somewhere, anywhere. I refused. She kept crying, saying she needed my help, that she had nowhere else to turn. That's when she told me what happened. Andrew had left her for another woman. A nurse from his hospital, barely out of college. Apparently, he wasn't happy with how Sam looked after having the baby. According to Sam, Andrew had been making comments about her weight for months. She'd gained some during pregnancy and struggled to lose it after the birth. He started going to the gym without her, buying new clothes, staying late at work. 3 days ago, he told her he wanted a divorce. Said she'd let herself go and wasn't attractive enough for him anymore. Then he told her to leave his house, my mom's house, because his new girlfriend would be moving in. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Sam cried about how she had nowhere to go. Her parents had meant it when they said she wasn't welcome if she married Andrew. She was staying at some cheap motel with their 13-month-old daughter, running out of money fast. Andrew had cleared out their joint account before telling her to leave. I listened to her cry for almost an hour. She told me how hard the past year had been. How Andrew changed after the baby was born. How he was never home, never helped with the baby, complained about everything she did. She said she'd realized too late what kind of man he really was. Then she asked if she could stay with me until she figured something out. Said she knew she had no right to ask, but she was desperate. That's when I finally spoke. I told her exactly what I thought. I reminded her that she chose this. She chose to sleep with my stepfather while my mother was dying of cancer. She chose to keep his baby despite knowing what it would do to everyone involved. She chose to marry him even after her own parents disowned her. These were all her choices, and now she had to live with them. She started crying harder, begging me to help if not for her then for the baby. She said her daughter was technically my family, my stepsister. I cut her off right there. I told her that baby wasn't my family. It was the child she created by betraying my dying mother with her husband. I wished her luck and hung up. Mike thinks I'm being too harsh. He says I should help her for old time's sake, that she's clearly learned her lesson. But he doesn't understand. Every time I think about Sam, I see her with Andrew in my mother's bed. I see her defending their relationship to her parents. I see her asking for joint custody of their baby like it was some kind of sick joke. Sam texted me later that night with a picture of her daughter. The baby has my mom's eyes. I blocked her number after that. I can't be the person she turns to now that her fairy tale romance has fallen apart. She made her choice, and she has to live with it. Andrew sent me an email this morning. He said he was sorry for how things turned out, that he never meant to hurt Sam. He actually asked if I would talk to her, help her understand that sometimes relationships just don't work out. The audacity of this man never ceases to amaze me. I marked his email as spam without replying. I told Mike I'm not responsible for fixing Sam's life just because she finally realized what everyone tried to tell her. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Sam chose to torch every relationship in her life for Andrew. Now she can deal with the ashes on her own. Update 3. This will be my final update. A lot has happened in the past 2 months, and I think it's time to close this chapter of my life completely. After my last update, Sam's Aunt Martha reached out to me through Linda. She lives in Oregon and had heard about the whole situation. Martha offered to let Sam and the baby live with her until Sam could get back on her feet. Sam initially refused, she was still holding out hope that Andrew would take her back. But reality hit hard when Andrew's new girlfriend moved into Mom's house last month. Sam finally accepted Martha's offer and moved across the country with her daughter. Linda told me they helped with the move, but only on the condition that Sam would stay away from Andrew completely. They're trying to rebuild their relationship with her, but John still can't look at her without getting angry. Linda sends money for the baby but won't visit yet. She says she needs more time. Andrew married his new girlfriend last week. She's 22 and apparently pregnant already. I heard about it from mutual friends. I've blocked everyone connected to that situation on social media, but news still finds its way to me. Mom's house has been completely redecorated. All traces of her are gone. Andrew's new wife didn't want to live in a dead woman's space, according to the gossip. I bought my own house in a different city, about 3 hours from my old life. It's smaller than what I had with Sam, but it's mine. My new job keeps me busy, and I've made some good friends here. Mike visits sometimes, but mostly I'm starting fresh. I'm dating someone new, Rebecca. She's a teacher at a local high school. We met at a coffee shop when I accidentally took her drink. She knows my whole story and understands why I have trust issues. We're taking things slow, very slow. She's patient with me when certain things trigger memories of Sam and Andrew. She never pushes me to move faster than I'm comfortable with. I still miss my mom every day. There's a box of her things in my closet that I haven't been able to open yet. Sometimes I wonder what she would think about all this. Would she blame herself for bringing Andrew into our lives? Would she be angry at Sam, or just sad? I'll never know. Linda sent me a birthday card last week. She wrote that she hopes I find happiness again, that I deserve it after everything. She also mentioned that Sam's daughter, my stepsister, though I'll never think of her that way, is walking now. I didn't respond. Some doors are better left closed. I won't be updating again. This part of my life is over. Sam made her choices, and she has to live with them. Andrew showed his true colors, just like everyone except Sam could see. My mom is gone, and nothing can change that. All I can do is move forward. To everyone who supported me through this nightmare, thank you. Your words helped me stay strong when I wanted to break down. Your advice kept me from making decisions out of anger or pain. I'm not okay yet, but I will be. Some endings aren't happy. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds take years to heal. But life goes on, with or without the people who hurt us. I'm choosing to go on without them.